Hello and welcome to Lightspeed, where we discuss music and music production topics. My name is Sunwarper.
And my name is Curtis. What are we discussing this week?
So today we're talking about imposter syndrome, and this was something you wanted to talk about. So, do you have a definition on hand?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome is something that is defined as, and I'm just going to go to my thing here. Imposter syndrome is defined as an internal experience of believing you are not as competent as others believe you to be, which, whether you have been producing for 15 minutes or 15 years, I think this is something that we can all relate to at some point. And
Definitely.
I feel as though it's something that is kind of very much internalized and very much kind of not discussed in the open world. But yeah, and that's kind of why I want to talk about it, because I mean, we've done a lot of the productions over the past couple of weeks, and that's always good and done. But I mean, yeah, it's the production of the mind as well. It's always
Yeah.
important to kind of discuss and talk about.
So let's talk about some of the ways that it manifests in artists, and I mean, coming from our own perspectives, how it manifests for you.
Well, I mean, the biggest one, I suppose, to start off with is perfectionism. I think this is kind of one of the biggest ailments of what we do. Is this idea that, the work that we do has to be perfect, or it has to be, um, or what we would consider as broadcastable or showcaseable
Right.
is completely above what everyone else perceives it to be. I think as we're all our own worst critic, and we're always looking, we always see the inconsistencies in our work, and we always hear the mistakes, and where perhaps a sound isn't quite where we want it to be, that isn't then necessarily transposed to the audience.
We listen to these songs a ton while we're working on it. So we know every nuance and little detail in each track. Now, if you think about it as a listener, when you listen to a song, you don't hear all of that. You're not hearing the stems. You're not hearing all the different takes. You're not hearing or seeing, the VSTs and the plugins and hardware, or whatever. You're just hearing the final product.
Well, that leads nicely into. I mean, similar to mental health issues in that sense, in the sense of making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah,
And it's, you
totally.
see this big project in front of you, and you see this thing. You see the end product and what it has to be. This 12 tracks of 45 minutes of wonderful cut ambient or whatever. The reality is, an album is just 7 to 12 tracks, which are then just put together, and
Yeah.
that kind of seeing it as one big block and seeing it is really daunting. But I mean, if you just take it step by step, just take it a track at a time. It's a
Yeah.
track at a time. Like.
It's also important to remember that no matter how much you think an album is special to you, or how important it is, or how you feel you've done something completely new, like, it's one album in what will be a lifetime of albums and songs, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter.
Another big manifestation I have found in my own experience. I mean, I'm terrible for it. Is comparisons. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Like, so there's that, because we have this continuous loop of stuff people are doing, which is all fantastic. And it's all beautiful in that own way. You get false kind of ideas of productivity and of manifestation and how that works, and you keep comparing your situation to someone else's situation, which again makes you feel tiny, very tiny.
So, what are some of the ways that you work through imposter syndrome?
Well, I think one of the biggest ways has we've kind of touched upon before in a show a couple of months ago. Repetition, repetition, and powering through. Writer's block. That's what we're only talking about. Writer's block.
Yeah.
Um, just powering through, and just kind of. It doesn't sound particularly healthy, but when you kind of just sit down at the desk and you punch something through, and you just get working through it. That, for me personally, is a good way of doing it.
I think that is actually healthy, though, because that's a way to work through your imposter syndrome. I mean, if you're doing it in a way where you're trying to do it nonstop every day, nothing's clicking, and you're making it worse in your head because you're saying, oh, I can't get anything to work. Sure, that's not healthy. But if you just sit down, try something novel, like in the deep dive of writer's block, we talked about like trying a chord plugin, where you just hit one note and it plays chords in a key. Something like that, where you can just get your brain working creatively, and then like if you have perfectionism when it comes to social media or anxiety about promoting or something, you just have to kind of do it and work through it and realize that your expectation of, oh, the first time I post this I'm going to get tons of likes and buys, it's not going to happen. Like, it's going to be a slow, steady progress, but you just have to keep doing it.
Yeah, completely. And I think one of the key parts of that is finding a tribe and finding your community.
Yeah.
I think that's twofold. I think there's two reasons for that. I think firstly, that gives you a group support network of people who are firstly like-minded, but also are positive, and they're egging you on, and they're telling you can do it and all that stuff. Even if you don't believe in yourself, you can kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Sometimes external gratification is a necessary thing in small amounts.
Yeah.
And then, but as well as that, you find out more about your own sound, and I think that's where the confidence comes in. I think if you see where you sit on your plane of existence in comparison to where other people are, not only have you got that support network, but you also see where you sit, and you can see where your place is. And I think with time, with that repetition that we said before, you begin to carve out your own little pocket, which is uniquely yours. And I think once you have that and you've got confidence in that, I think that's key. I think that's key.
Yeah, and just getting on that existential topic of planes of existence, I think it's also smart to remember this is your own journey, and when you compare to someone else's journey, there's a lot of issues in that comparison. Like, you don't know their life, you don't know the things they've experienced and all that type of stuff, and it's important that comparisons don't really make sense when you think about it that way.
And I think that ties in nicely to kind of like my final point, which is actually, it's my point, but you put it very nicely. What it kind of boils down to is confidence, not arrogance, in the sense of knowing where you are and understanding and having zero expectations for where you want your work to go. If you sit there and you got this little EP and you go, I'm going to go get 100,000 streams on Spotify, or I'm going to make $2,000, that's inevitably going to be a place where you're going to get into a realm of disappointment. But,
yeah. Well, it's an externalization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think with that also comes I think on the social side of that as well is this idea that we know nothing, and framing that in that sense of we live in a world of influencers and gurus, and we live in a world where there's people who apparently have knowledge, and they put it behind paywalls and stuff, and that can be very daunting. But in reality, it doesn't need to necessarily be that way.
As always, we are just two people, and these are just our opinions and our approach. So if you have any ways that you approach imposter syndrome, put it down in the comments. We'd love to hear it and talk about it.
Thank you ever so much for listening. It's been awesome. We are back next week with another radio broadcast, and we will be back ourselves in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, and in the interim, if you want to check out some of the music we've been listening to and have on our radio, we've got a playlist on Spotify. The link will be down below.